Good afternoon, everybody. This is Corey Hysoon from the IACD team, welcoming all of you to our IACD webinar. We're very grateful today to welcome Mr. Todd Weller from Bandura Cyber. Todd is the Chief Strategy Officer of Bandura Cyber and is going to share insights today into how organizations are using threat intelligence gateways for automation and taking actions with threat intelligence to improve edge security. We'll be following online. If anyone would like to post questions, feel free to post them in the comments section. And with that said, I'd like to give the floor to Todd. Todd, the floor is all yours, sir.
Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining. And I want to send a special thanks to the IACD team for having us this afternoon. So let's talk a little bit about, before I get to the agenda, just some background on myself. So I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Bandura Cyber. I've been in the cyber security industry for over 20 years. I've been a bit of an eclectic background in that I spent about 75% of that time as a equity research analyst for Wall Street type, covering the sector from an analyst perspective. And the last 6 years, I've been on the technology vendor side. So I think, I bring a unique perspective given that experience. So today, from an agenda perspective, we'll spend a little bit of time on cybersecurity challenges, the scale challenges that we see, and then we'll talk about the growing importance of threat intelligence and automation to overcome those challenges and to improve security. Threat intelligence gateways are a newer emerging area of cyber technology that isn't well known today. So I'm going to give you an introduction to them, the what, the why, the how, and how they're helping organizations of all sizes use and operationalize threat intelligence to improve edge security. And we'll also talk about how threat intelligence gateways kind of fit within the existing ecosystem, because we know today that that's critical. Integration and automation are absolutely critical to any security efforts that are occurring today. So in the scale problem, what we like to talk about is that every organization is facing scale problems when it comes to cyber. And these scale problems are spanning multiple dimensions. The first is the threat volumes. We don't have to belabor this point. I'm not going to go through all these metrics, but that just the volume and the velocity continues to increase. It's a daily event. I live close to Baltimore. Baltimore's been in the news with ransomware attacks, Florida last week. And, we're also seeing now, I think what's very dynamic is things like the geopolitical environment where with Iran, media reports say that, while we did not launch the kinetic attack last week, there was a cyber attack launched. And that is driving security considerations by all sorts of organizations. We've seen ISAC put out alerts around Iran and the conflict and to pay more attention to that. So this is kind of the fact of life, right? It's kind of not if and not when, and there's no end to sight into kind of cyber threat volumes and that pressuring us as organizations. It's also creating some pressures on technology, right? Volume of known threats continues to grow. You have to do, at least from a network security perspective, the packet inspection processing. So we'll run into many companies that feel like it's a never-ending, game there to keep upgrading, processing horsepower to deal with the threat landscape. And then, integration and automation is getting a lot better, which is a good thing. And then certainly the skill shortage. And again, this is like, okay, we know this, but what I'd like to point out here really is how companies are looking to overcome this. And it's really, I'd say, in three ways. One is automation. So automation is critical. I think vendors have come a long way in this regard, but organizations of all sizes now need to be looking at how they can better automate what they're doing to get more out of their scarce resources. The other A, which will get some eyebrows raised, is artificial intelligence, where organizations are looking to help scale the human, not take the human out, but better scale it. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, and analytics are playing a role in that. And then the other angle is really outsourcing. If you can't have the skills yourself, outsource it. In some cases, that's to a managed security service provider. In some cases, I'd recommend if you're a resource-constrained organization like a local government, the more you use public cloud, the better off you're going to be, because I think the infrastructure of Amazon and Microsoft and Google is arguably more secure than many of the infrastructures of those type of organizations. So this is an important point, is given what we see in the environment, you're not alone. We can't kind of fight this battle in isolation. You can't do it alone. And this is really where threat intelligence and information sharing is becoming more critical. This is an interesting data point from a survey we were involved with that just showed, hey, threat intelligence is becoming more important to more organizations. I'd also tell you anecdotally, looking at other data points validates this. So if you were to look at elite security organizations, these tend to be Fortune 1000 organizations, the biggest MSSPs. Pretty much all of them have dedicated threat intelligence teams today. They're using lots and lots of threat intelligence feeds from multiple sources. I think if you were to kind of take it a step down and say, larger enterprises that don't have the 2,400 people that Bank of America does, for example, in security and risk, they're still using more threat intelligence feeds. I saw some data from Forrester Research that said, enterprises over 1,000 employees are using, an average of 4.2 commercial threat feeds. And then if you look at it, it is really shifting down market to mid-sized companies, and that's showing up in MSSP and managed detection and response requirements. The other important point I'd make here is that we're also seeing threat intelligence use and sharing become more important in frameworks like the NIST cybersecurity framework, like the health industry, cyber best practices. So I think this trend is on the rise. There's great interest in the use of threat intelligence. And I think what's driving that is that there are increasingly quantifiable benefits around threat intelligence. It's helping organizations to detect threats faster. It's helping them to respond and remediate threats faster. And again, going back to scaling staff, it's reducing the amount of time that security staff has to spend on certain work areas. So while this is all great and threat intelligence is important and has benefits, we do see that there's challenges with it. Threat intelligence does often require significant resources. There's a lot of threat intelligence out there from commercial sources, government sources like the DHS Automated Indicator Sharing program and the threat feed that's associated with that. ISAC, the Elections Infrastructure ISAC. Every industry, has ISACs. There's tons of open source, so it's confusing. I was at Gartner last week, and the threat intelligence presentation, Craig Watson said, we're tracking over 100 plus vendors, and frankly, most of those vendors are threat feed providers. So how do you make sense of this? How do you manage it? And then how do you take action with it? And whether you are a large company that's very sophisticated with lots of resources or a small mid-size, they're all facing some sort of challenges when it comes to utilizing threat intelligence to improve their security protection as well as improve security operations. So let's turn to the threat intelligence gateway, which I often find to be an interesting discussion, and we have a lot of internal debate. But what is the threat intelligence gateway? So here is an independent view, right? Gartner defined this as an emerging technology area a few years ago, and if you look at the Gartner definition, it's defined as a network security solution that filters traffic based on large volumes of threat intelligence indicators. So here it's a very network security centric view of a threat intelligence gateway. So is it a network security solution or edge? Yes. But when you also take a look and dig down, it's also a threat intelligence solution. And in many cases, it's a threat intelligence platform that also blocks. And so if you look at what threat intelligence platforms do is they're providing you access to a lot of threat intelligence from multiple sources. Many of them have, app marketplaces. You can try threat feeds from multiple providers and then incorporate them. all that threat intelligence is being aggregated in one place. Analytics are being applied. Threat intelligence is automatically updated. And that's kind of the high-level definition of the threat intelligence platform. And there's very good companies in that space, companies like Anomaly, Threat Quotient, Threat Connect, Eclectic IQ, for example. But when it comes to the action piece, that's what separates the threat intelligence gateway. That's, I think, the key differentiator is the ability to take action. And as you look at this, it's really important that all of this is integrated and automated. And you'll see that there's different ways that customers do this. There's TIP plus TIG combination. There's also many customers, I would tell you, that don't have the people. They don't have big stocks. They don't have analysts. So they can't afford or don't have the resources for a threat intelligence platform. And so they will look to a threat intelligence gateway to provide that functionality. So I don't think it really matters how you get there. And I think you'll see later as I introduce a new concept that we're talking about more, automated full cycle threat intelligence, that, the model is not important. What is important is that more people are using threat intelligence and that you're doing it in an integrated and automated way. And oftentimes that's going to involve multiple vendors working together. And that's one of the great things about Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory and what the IACD team is doing. They've driven a lot around security orchestration and integration and automated response and analytics. So threat intelligence gateway technology is somewhat unique in that it sits at the intersection of these two worlds. It's a network security solution, but that's driven and fueled by threat intelligence. But it's also, in many cases, viewed as a threat intelligence solution that is giving people access to TI, but then taking that next critical step of action. So let's talk about the edge security, network security, and some of the challenges that exist there from a threat intelligence perspective. So network security is not new. Everybody has firewalls, IPS, in a lot of cases, right, that's collapsed today into a next-gen firewall that's running intrusion prevention as a feature, and those are all great solutions. What you'll find with them, though, is that they generally are biased towards that specific vendor's threat intelligence. So if you're Palo Alto, if you're Cisco, if you're WatchGuard, your Barracuda, pick your flavor, generally speaking, the intelligence you're working with is based on the intelligence from those vendors, from their customer bases, their sensor networks, and it's very good foundational threat intelligence. But I would also suggest that it's just one vendor's view, and in this cyber threat landscape we live in, you need a broader view of threat intelligence. The second challenge here is that many of these solutions just weren't built to deal with a lot of third-party indicator or IOC ingestion and processing. And so for performance reasons, architecture reasons, there's oftentimes limits in the ability to put in third-party indicators into next-gen firewalls. And you can see some data over to the right that shows just generally 300,000, a few hundred thousand, that number's probably going up a bit over time. Now compared to threat intelligence gateways, which can do over 100 plus million unique indicators. And then setting aside a capacity issue, you have also managing and maintaining blacklists and ACLs, right? It can be cumbersome. And if you have 20 next-gen firewalls and there's access control lists or blacklists in all of them, and you update 19 but forget the last, you've exposed yourself. And these blacklists and ACLs, indicators are very dynamic today, right? Just the IP behind a specific domain can constantly be changing. IPs are coming on and off blacklists. The reputation score of the domain or IP is constantly changing. Something benign now could be malicious in 2 minutes from now, and then 5 minutes later it can be benign again. And so we need to be flexible to react to this and to do that in an automated fashion. So that's why the importance of automation when it comes to the threat intelligence, not only from the feeds and indicators themselves, but also from the operational aids of those, as far as the blacklist, the access control list, and the security controls we're using. So this is just the conceptual view of threat intelligence gateway technology. Again, fundamentally, it is sitting on the network, and it's looking at inbound and outbound network traffic, and it's making an allow or deny decision, generally based on some combination of what you see there. It could be a reputation-based risk, kind of score threshold, command and control, for example, over 90, block. Presence on a blacklist, whitelisting, looking for gray listing in there as well, as well as GeoIP, where is this coming from? As I mentioned earlier, if folks aren't blocking Iran, maybe they're blocking that today because, the threat landscape has intensified there, or maybe they're looking at it more closely, so being able to tell where it's coming from and then who, based on autonomous system number. And it's being able to do that with a wide range of threat intelligence. Really, the threat intelligence you want to use. And threat intel is often, for many companies, it needs to be tailored to your unique business. What threats do you face? So you need flexibility to say, I want to use multiple commercial sources. I want to use this open source. I want to use my industry. I want to use the AIS feed from the US. And then there's internal. So being able to take all of that is critical. So from how do TIGs improve edge security? And I'll preface that by saying, firewalls are good at what they do. And one thing I'd like to mention about TIG, which I didn't, was that the TIG is doing basic packet filtering. It's looking at packet header, generally speaking, IP, and goes a little bit up to layer 4 by pulling the domain off, but that's where it stops. So what we find is, that deep packet inspection is great, it's necessary. TIGs are not replacing next-gen firewalls. They don't replace IPS. They complement them. So we talked about the limitations some of those areas have with respect to edge security. So now let's talk briefly here about how do TIGs really improve edge security. Why would our organization looking at this technology? And I think there's kind of three main reasons. The first is really increases the intelligence of the edge. We talked about this previously. All that diverse threat intelligence from multiple sources that you can use to improve visibility, improve your protection, and your ability to detect threats. The other angle is it is enabling the movement of threat intelligence from the SOC to the edge. And it's integrated, it's synergistic, but meaning a lot of organizations to date have integrated the threat intelligence into the SIMs, and they're correlating that with what they're seeing from their other devices. Now with a TIG, without limit, you can take that threat intelligence and also apply it at the edge of your network. And so from a prevention perspective, that enables proactive blocking, but we know that prevention is not 100% effective. Threats are going to get through. So the telemetry a TIG can see flows back to a SIM. So that provides more context, that improves detection and monitoring and investigation. And then with integration and orchestration, the ability to do automated response. So, in any case, it's improving edge intelligence, increasing edge intelligence. And from an efficiency perspective, we also see it is improving edge efficiency. So if you can block a known threat based on its IP and based on domain, based on blacklist, based on reputation score, and you don't have to go through deep packet inspection, that's the most efficient way to go about it. And again, you need both. There are pros and cons to each of the approaches, right? I mean, there's IP and blacklist and GeoIP. There's pros and there's some cons to those approaches. And same with deep packet inspection. So you need both, but how can you combine both in the most efficient way to, block threats at the edge of your network, both, again, effectively and efficiently. And then the other angle of edge efficiency is really reducing manual staff workload. So there's an angle here of threat feed management. You don't have to deal with that. But I would tell you for organizations that are what I would call threat intelligence power users, they are really looking to the TIG to offload the manual workload of managing blacklists and access control lists. And then lastly, it increases edge flexibility. So it gives the customer the ability to integrate and take action with the threat intelligence that's best suited for the business requirements. And it kind of future-proofs a bit at security because TI is going to change. Who's the great threat intelligence provider today? It's going to be different than, a year from now. There's always something new in security that's fortunate or unfortunately. So having the flexibility to plug in threat intelligence is, I think, critical. So this is just to say, again, TIGs are part of a defense in depth ecosystem. And again, IACD team has done a great job because defense in depth is not new, but there's been just this humongous need to enable integration and orchestration and automate it so all this stuff can work together better. And that is critical to solving the scale problem. So we talked already around much of this, right? The TIGs are complementing next-gen firewalls. In many cases, you're seeing kind of reduction in traffic load to deep packet inspection, and organizations are able to kind of get more out of the firewalls. Secure DNS, again, complementary. Secure DNS tends to be outbound only, right? TIGs can look at both inbound and outbound. And then SOC solutions. So whether it's a SIM or a threat intelligence platform or, SOAR, then we see that, TIGs integrate with all these and work in a cohesive kind of security ecosystem of companies. And if TIGs are not doing that, frankly, if any security solution you're looking at, is not open and flexible and API driven, that to me is almost like a requirement these days for organizations that are deploying security technologies. So this is a new concept that I'd like to introduce, and it'll be a work in process here, but kind of come up with this automated full cycle threat intelligence concept. And, it kind of expands upon, Gartner's model, which is, acquire threat intelligence, aggregate it, and take action, right? That's how they frame it. I think that's a great way to look at it. But if you really kind of segment it a bit more over what happens with the threat intelligence, the cycle, right? It starts with collecting threat intelligence, whether you're collecting it on your own or a third-party threat intelligence provider is collecting it. It's, aggregating. You need to bring all that threat intelligence into one place. That's the only way you're going to be able to get to the next step, which is analyzing that threat intelligence so, you can determine what's actionable. However, even determining what's actionable, you then need to deliver that intelligence. And delivery could be to a user in the form of an alert or report, but delivery is also automated, sending machine-readable threat intelligence to a security control, which in either of those cases, the next goal is take an action, right? Detect, look for more, threat hunt, investigate, proactively block this IP, this indicator, this hash for 2 hours. If it doesn't stop, next time do it for 2 weeks. And then I've added another piece because I think this is becoming more critical, sharing. And this is sharing not only among a community, but, also sharing back to threat intelligence providers. And this all has to be integrated and automated. Again, there's no one solution out there that does all of this, right? And that's the point is, it all does need to work together cohesively. It needs to be integrated and it needs to be automated because nobody has the time to manage all this. But the importance of that sharing, if you think about it, if you're able to take that intelligence that we believe is actionable and then to see what's happening on networks, on endpoints, and to be able to share that back to threat intelligence providers, other security companies, your peers, you are improving protection, you are informing what that threat intelligence looks like. If we start to see a certain IP address is spanning 20 financial services firms, that's important, right? The increase of those sightings, a 6-2 term, right? How many sightings are we seeing? And then having that should dictate, the rest of the cycle. So we need that collection needs to not only include the initial threat intelligence, but sharing from what we're seeing in real world networks. And then that needs to inform the analysis and delivering that. So, new concept we're starting to talk about more, but I think this is critical. And so leave it at that and open the feedback and discussion on that point. So with that, I'm going to sum it up. We're all dealing with cybersecurity scale problems across multiple dimensions. We talked about them, the threat volumes, the security tool limitations, as well as the people. No doubt the trend is up and to the right. Threat intelligence and automation is increasingly critical to both protection, awareness of the landscape, but also to scaling security efforts. Threat intelligence gateway technology, I think, is interesting, emerging area. And, what's interesting is that, companies of all sizes are using it. And companies that operationalize threat intelligence and small and mid-sized companies to, for turnkey threat intelligence to blocks. And then, again, it's critical that, TIGs integrate with existing security tools. And again, it's critical, I think, as we look at the whole threat intelligence cycle from collection to aggregation to analysis to delivery to action to sharing, that is integrated and automated. So with that, I want to again thank the IACD team for having us today. Hope this was useful. Happy to answer any questions. And if you want a copy of the presentation or you want some more information, there's my information. Feel free to reach out.
All right. Thank you so much, Todd. On behalf of all of us in IACD, we're just very thankful for your insights, sharing your vision of moving forward with automation and actions with threat intelligence, and for your time with us today. For everybody, this webinar will be made available on our YouTube channel shortly after we're finished. Please subscribe and be notified as additional webinars and other videos are available. Again, thank you, Todd, and for everyone for tuning in. We'll see you all next time. Goodbye.